Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we will be continuing my astrology series. What we are going to be discussing in today's video are the houses, all 12 of them. And if you want some reading material to follow along with this video, I will again have a PDF linked in the description box. So let's hop right into the houses because I am running out of natural light. Okay, so your birth chart is divided into 12 individual segments known as the houses. What you will notice from looking at your chart and other people's charts is that the signs move around the zodiac in a circular fashion, whereas the houses are always still. For everyone's chart, the houses are in the same locations, just like visually on the chart. So again, if the planets are what and the signs are how, then the houses represent the where. One important thing to know about the houses before we begin this video is that each house is ruled by a zodiac sign. So that house will embody the energy of that sign and the corresponding planets. All right, so beginning with the first house. So the first house is ruled by Aries. The first house is all about yourself, your ego, your self-image, and how people view you. So if you have Venus in the first house, down to the core of your being, you are probably extremely charming, very diplomatic, you're probably physically attractive, you probably are very deep into self-expression, creativity, whether that's art or music or just beauty and harmony in general, and you are probably someone who is very easy to get along with. So because your first house is also the house that your ascendant falls in, we'll be getting into ascendants in the next video, so stay tuned, but your ascendant is all about basically your mask that you put on the world, how people view you. So if you have planets or even just one planet in the first house, you might also identify with that planet's ruling sign as your ascendant, how you come across the world. So if you are technically a Scorpio rising, but you have Venus in your first house, then you could kind of go both ways. You could be kind of antisocial and secretive like a Scorpio, or you might identify more with Libra or Taurus. Okay, let's move on to the second house. So the second house is ruled by Taurus, and it represents material values and security comfort. So for example, if you have like Jupiter in the second house, you might have luck when it comes to making money or acquiring material wealth or assets. Or if you have like Aquarius in the second house, then the way you make your money might be a little unconventional, unorthodox from a way someone would typically make money. You know, Aquarius being the sign of rebellion and quirk. However you make your money or whatever your career is probably out of the social norm or just out of the norm in general. All right, so for the third house is ruled by Gemini. So we have a lot of Mercury energy in the third house. The third house is all about learning and communication. So for a quick example of that, if you have Scorpio in the third house, then the way you communicate is probably very secretive and mysterious. However, you probably go deep with your interests when it comes to learning. Okay, so the fourth house. The fourth house is naturally ruled by Cancer. So we're having some moon energy present here in the fourth house. And the fourth house represents your home life, your family, and your childhood. Basically your foundations. So for example, if you have Mars, you know, which is the planet of impulse, action, energy, passion, aggression. If you have that located in your fourth house, then you probably have major protective instincts when it comes to your family, or you could even just have a passion for domestic life in general. Okay, moving on to the fifth house, which is my favorite house. So the fifth house is naturally ruled by Leo, and so we have a lot of solar energy present in this house. The fifth house is all about creativity creativity, romance, and passion. So for example, if you have Pluto in your 5th house, you probably have a deep desire to create, and you might also be extremely intense when it comes to relationships. And for another example, if you have Virgo in your 5th house, then your creativity is probably expressed more through like practicality and structure and routines. That's probably a passion for you, and so you put a lot of your energy into that, making plans, etc. You're probably extremely smart and inventive when it comes to problem solving, and you probably move into relationships pretty slowly. Okay, moving on to the 6th house. The 6th house is naturally ruled by Virgo. Your 6th house describes your work ethic, your routines, your structure, duties, and also your health. So for example, if you have Neptune in your 6th house, Neptune being the planet of escape and illusions, then you probably gloss over your routines and you might just avoid your work duties in general. And when it comes to the health aspect of this house, if you have Neptune in the 6th house, then you might be one of those people that never goes to the doctor because they don't want to face reality, or are scared or nervous or have anxiety about seeing doctors. Okay, moving on to the 7th house. So the 7th house is naturally ruled by Libra. So we have some Venus energies present in this house. The 7th house speaks to your relationships, partnerships, and marriage. So for example, if you have Uranus in your 7th house, with Uranus being the planet of rebellion, then your partner probably views you as kind of erratic and inconsistent. You really don't want to be tied down because you love your freedom. So you might have issues in relationships with people that are super needy or clingy. You probably need to be with someone that also really respects and enjoys their own personal freedom. Okay, so moving on to the 8th house. Now, the 8th house is very, very complex. It consists of a lot of different areas in life. It is naturally ruled by Scorpio, so we have a lot of Pluto energy present in this house. So the 8th house is home to anything hidden. So life secrets, things you don't like to express to the world. It is also the house of intimacy, and along with that, the house of sex and taboos, and even the occult. But on the other hand of that, it is also the house of joint resources. So basically, wealth or money that doesn't really belong to you. So things like inheritance, debt, taxes, things like that. And depending on what planets fall in your 8th house, it is one of the houses that can indicate addiction and vices. So for example, if you have Mercury in the 8th house, then you are probably very gifted when it comes to analyzing people and reading them. Just after one conversation, you might realize that you picked up on things that they naturally hide from the world. Another example would be if you have Jupiter in your 8th house. When it comes to the joint resources side of this house, it could mean that you are going to receive a large inheritance, or that you can easily avoid debt. And if you have Jupiter in the 8th house, then it could also mean something like you are very skilled in the bedroom. Okay, moving on to the 9th house. So the 9th house is naturally ruled by Sagittarius, and it is all about travel, higher learning, and your life philosophies. So for example, if you have Saturn in the 9th house, and Saturn being the planet of limitations or obstacles, then that could mean a few different things. It could translate in the way of possibly having some kind of learning disability. It could be something like you have anxiety and that keeps you from learning. It could mean mean that you had difficulties in your home life when you were a child, maybe, that ended up affecting your whole philosophy on life and your values. And it could be something also as literal as you have bad luck when you travel. So for a further example and to expand upon that, I have my Saturn in my 9th house. And I also have it in the sign Aquarius. And I noticed that my life relates to this in multiple ways. I didn't necessarily have trouble learning when I was a kid, but I kind of see this Aquarius energy coming in because I was kind of quirky and different when it came to the things I was interested in. So I had trouble learning anything that didn't immediately strike my interest. And I also have a lot of bad luck when I travel. So every time I go to Paris, I get held up at the airport because they have to check my identity like 20 times. I swear to God, it happens all the time. I travel with my job constantly and there's always an issue. Last time I went to London, I got food poisoning, having delayed flights, all of that. It always happens to me. Okay, so moving on to the 10th house. So the 10th house is naturally ruled by Capricorn, and it is the house of careers, prestige, and your reputation. So for example, if you have your moon in the 10th house, then you are probably very emotionally driven, and get emotional satisfaction out of being really good at what you do and getting a lot of recognition from those around you. And another example, if your 10th house falls in the sign of Pisces, then you might initially struggle with decisions when it comes to what you want to do as your career. Okay, so moving on to the 11th house. The 11th house is naturally ruled by Aquarius, and it is the house of associations, friendships, and community. So for example, if you have your sun, which is the core of your being, in the 11th house, then you probably really indulge in group activities, and friendships and community are probably a big part of your ego and yourself, just in general. You're probably the kind of person that either joins a fraternity, sorority, sports team, or joins a club or a group or an association of some kind. Okay, so moving on to the 12th house, which is another very complex house. The 12th house is naturally ruled by Pisces, so we have Neptune energy present here. And the 12th house is all about the subconscious, psychological issues, spirituality, also secrets and isolation. So the 12th house isn't the happiest house. It's kind of dark, actually. Depending on what planets fall in this house, it can be another indicator of addictions or vices. So for example, if you have Mars in the 12th house, Mars is the planet of action and energy and passion and aggression, and so you might really suppress your impulses. That's a pretty unhealthy placement because it could mean that you eventually lash out with aggression because you try to suppress this deep, passionate Mars energy. And another cool thing about the 12th house that's pretty interesting is that it can be an indicator of major like spirituality, not necessarily like traditional religion, but more so the occult side of spirituality. So if you have Pluto or Neptune, the moon, or the sun in your 12th house, you are most likely interested in the darker parts of life, the occult. You might also be psychic. You might have a predisposition to be into things like witchcraft and astrology, and you're just deeply spiritual in general. All right, guys, I literally finished all this right as I'm about to run out of light. I'm sure you can tell it's been getting so dark on camera this whole time. I apologize for that. I meant to get started way earlier in the day and it just didn't work out. So yeah, that's what I have for you guys today. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you want to ask me about certain placements in your chart, now that we've gone over the signs, the planets, and the houses, please don't hesitate to reach out, leave a comment, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Turn on the notifications button so you are updated every time I post new material. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.